A struggling widower sees a woman crying alone with twin babies at the station. What happens next will break you before the story begins. Share your location in the comments. Sit back and enjoy. The rain pounded mercilessly on the tin roof of Jackson Miller's old pickup truck as he pulled into the train station parking lot. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white with tension. Beside him, 7-year-old Noah pressed his small face against the foggy window, his breath creating ghostly patterns on the glass. "Dad, look," Noah whispered, pointing toward a solitary figure on a bench beneath the station's dim lights. "That lady is crying." Jackson squinted through the rain-streaked windshield. A young woman sat hunched on the bench, her shoulders heaving with each sob. More concerning were the two small forms curled against her, identical twin girls no more than 5 years old, fast asleep despite the downpour that had soaked through their thin pink coats. "We should mind our business, Noah," Jackson muttered, though his eyes lingered on the scene. 3 years as a single father had taught him how to armor his heart, how to walk through life focused solely on his son's needs and nothing more. "But Dad," Noah's voice quavered with concern beyond his years, "you always say we should help people in trouble, like when Pastor Thomas helped us after Mom went to heaven." The mention of Rebecca, of the accident that had stolen her from them, made Jackson flinch, but Noah was right. With a deep sigh that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul, Jackson nodded. "Wait in the truck, buddy. Lock the doors." The rain drenched Jackson's jacket within seconds as he approached the woman. Up close, he could see she was beautiful despite her red-rimmed eyes and sodden clothes. Her dark hair clung to her pale face, and when she looked up, the raw desperation in her eyes struck him like a physical blow. "Excuse me, ma'am," Jackson said awkwardly, rain dripping from his baseball cap. "Are you and your daughters all right?" The woman wiped her eyes with a sleeve that was too wet to dry anything. "We're," her voice cracked. "We'll be fine. The next train comes in 3 hours." One of the little girls stirred, whimpering in her sleep. Jackson noticed they were identical, same blonde curls, same delicate features. Something in his chest twisted painfully. "I'm Jackson Miller," he said, surprising himself with the introduction. "My son and I, we have a place you could dry off, just until the train comes." The woman hesitated, studying his face with wary eyes. "I'm Emily Thompson," she finally replied. "These are my daughters, Olivia and Sophia." What happened? The question slipped out before Jackson could stop it. Emily's composure crumbled. "He left us here. My fiancé said he couldn't be a father to another man's children. After 2 years together, She gestured helplessly at the empty station. Jackson stood frozen, rain streaming down his face, mingling with what might have been tears. The image before him, a woman and her children abandoned, vulnerable, stirred something he'd buried alongside his wife. Compassion. "Come with us," he said softly. "Please." From the truck, Noah watched his father help the woman gather her single suitcase and guide her toward them, supporting one sleeping child while she carried the other. For the first time in ages, the boy smiled a true smile. Sometimes, Noah thought, the rain brings good things too. The old church loomed ahead as Jackson's truck crawled through the deepening night, wipers fighting against the relentless rain. In the back seat, Emily sat rigid, one arm around each of her sleeping daughters. Her eyes met Jackson's in the rearview mirror, filled with uncertainty and fragile trust. "It's not much," Jackson said apologetically as he parked. "My Uncle Thomas was the pastor here until the congregation built a new place downtown. Nobody's used it for services in years, but the electricity still works." Noah bounced in his seat, eager to help. "Dad and I come here sometimes when we need to think. It's peaceful." The ancient wooden doors groaned as Jackson pushed them open, fumbling for the light switch. Dust particles danced in the sudden illumination, revealing worn pews and faded stained glass. But it was dry and warm, a sanctuary from the storm outside. "We can put the kids on these," Jackson said, pushing 2 pews together to form makeshift beds. Emily gently laid Olivia and Sophia down, brushing wet hair from their foreheads with trembling fingers. They'll be scared when they wake up in a strange place, she whispered. As if on cue, little Sophia's eyes fluttered open. Her face crumpled in confusion, tears welling up instantly. Olivia woke moments later, her frightened gaze darting around the unfamiliar surroundings. "Hey there," Noah said, stepping forward with surprising confidence. He held out a worn teddy bear, his most precious possession since his mother's death. "This is Mr. Growly. He helps me when I'm scared." The twins stared at Noah momentarily, distracted from their fear. Sophia reached out cautiously, touching the bear's ear. "Where are we, Mommy?" Olivia asked, her small voice echoing in the cavernous space. Emily knelt beside her daughters. "We're safe, sweetheart. This is Jackson and Noah. They're helping us tonight." "Where are we going tomorrow?" Sophia whispered. Emily's composure faltered. I don't know yet." In the awkward silence that followed, Jackson busied himself gathering blankets from a storage closet. When he returned, Emily was wiping fresh tears. "I had no plan," she admitted quietly after the children had moved to explore the church under Noah's enthusiastic guidance. "I just got on a train to escape the humiliation. Mark, my fiancé, he made it clear long ago that the girls were a burden. I just refused to see it until he abandoned us at that station." Jackson sat across from her, his own pain rising to the surface. 3 years ago, my wife Rebecca was driving home from work. Rainy night like this one, a truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. He paused, the familiar ache spreading through his chest. Noah was 5. Sometimes I still don't know where we're going either. From the front of the church came the sound of children's laughter. Noah had found an old box of Sunday school supplies and was showing the twins how to make paper angels. "Dad," he called excitedly. "I'm hungry. Can we make those special sandwiches?" Jackson smiled faintly. Peanut butter and banana. Rebecca's recipe. To his surprise, Emily stood up. "I can help. It's the least I can do." In the small kitchenette at the back of the church, they worked side by side, slicing bananas and spreading peanut butter. When their hands accidentally touched reaching for the same knife, neither pulled away immediately. "Thank you," Emily said softly. "For not just driving past?" Jackson nodded, unable to express how, for the first time in 3 years, the rain beating against the windows didn't sound like an accusation. Morning light filtered through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the dusty church floor. Emily sat on a pew watching the twins and Noah play a makeshift game of hopscotch they'd created with hymnals laid in a pattern. Their laughter echoed through the sanctuary, a sound both foreign and healing in this abandoned place of worship. Jackson entered from the back door, his hair damp from washing up in the old bathroom. "I found some cereal bars in the pantry," he offered, setting them down. "Not much of a breakfast, but—" The heavy front doors burst open with a bang that made them all jump. A tall, elegantly dressed woman with silver-streaked hair stood in the doorway, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "Jackson Miller, what on earth is going on here?" Her voice cut through the air like a winter wind. "I've been calling you all night." Noah shrank back, his small face falling. "Grandma Victoria," he whispered to the twins, who quickly scurried. To Emily's side, Jackson's posture stiffened. "Victoria, I didn't expect you until Sunday." Victoria Hayes swept into the church, her expensive shoes clicking against the worn floor. Her sharp eyes took in Emily and the twins with unconcealed suspicion. "Pastor Roberts called me. Said he drove by and saw lights in the old church. Said your truck was parked outside all night." Her gaze fixed on Emily like a predator. "And now, I see why." Emily stood, smoothing her rumpled clothes self-consciously. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm Emily Thompson." Jackson kindly offered shelter when he found us stranded at the train station. "We'll be leaving as soon as—" "How convenient," Victoria interrupted coldly. "A damsel in distress with 2 children, and my son-in-law just happens to rescue you. Tell me, did you research Jackson's financial situation before this little performance?" Jackson stepped between them. "That's enough, Victoria. Emily and her daughters needed help." Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Of course they did. just like the last woman who tried to take advantage of you after Rebecca died. You're too trusting, Jackson. Always have been. Noah suddenly moved forward, his small hands balled into fists. Stop being mean. Emily makes good sandwiches and she's nice. Her boyfriend was a bad man who left them all alone. Victoria's eyes widened at her grandson's outburst. Noah, dear, you don't understand. I understand that you're being mean like those bullies at school, Noah said, tears welling in his eyes. Victoria's face flushed. She turned to Jackson, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. My daughter has been gone 3 years and you bring strange women around her son? Perhaps I should reconsider the custody arrangement we discussed after the funeral. The threat hung in the air like poison. Emily gathered the twins closer, their small faces confused and frightened by the tension. We'll go, Emily said quietly. Noah, thank you for sharing Mr. Growley last night. Girls, say thank you to Jackson and Noah for helping us. The twins mumbled their thanks, clinging to their mother's legs. Jackson's jaw clenched. For 3 years he had allowed Victoria's grief to control him, had accepted her interference because she was his only connection to Rebecca. But watching Emily preparing to take her daughters back into uncertainty awakened something long dormant inside him. No, he said firmly. You're staying, Emily. At least until you figure out your next step. He turned to Victoria. This is still my uncle's property, and I'm inviting them to stay. Victoria stepped back, shock replacing anger on her aristocratic features. I see. Her voice was ice. Rebecca would be so disappointed, Jackson. As she turned to leave, Noah called after her. No, she wouldn't, Grandma. Mom always helped people. The heavy doors closed behind Victoria with finality. In the silence that followed, Emily touched Jackson's arm gently. We shouldn't come between you and Noah's grandmother. Jackson looked down at her hand on his arm, then at the 3 children watching them with wide eyes. You're not, he said softly. For the first time in 3 years, you're helping me remember who I really am. The day after Victoria's stormy departure, an uneasy quiet settled over the church. Jackson had gone into town for supplies, leaving Emily with the children. She wandered the sanctuary, fingers trailing along dusty pews, mind racing with uncertainty about what to do next. In the far corner, partially hidden behind a tattered curtain, she discovered an old upright piano. Curiosity drew her closer. She lifted the worn wooden cover, revealing yellowed keys, some chipped at the edges. On impulse, Emily pressed one key, then another. Despite years of neglect, the piano remained remarkably in tune. Almost without conscious thought, her fingers found the opening notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The haunting melody filled the empty church, resonating against the high ceiling and worn wooden floors. Emily closed her eyes, losing herself in the music she hadn't played in years. So absorbed was she that Emily didn't notice the 3 small figures who had crept into the room until the music stopped. When she opened her eyes, Noah and the twins stood before her, their faces filled with wonder. That was beautiful, Noah whispered, as if afraid speaking too loudly might break the spell. My mom used to play music too, but on a guitar. Sophia stepped forward, her small hand touching the piano reverently. Can you teach me, Miss Emily? Me too, Olivia chimed in, never to be outdone by her sister. Emily smiled, patting the bench beside her. Come sit with me, all of you. She guided their small fingers to the keys, showing them how to play a simple melody. Their delighted giggles when they produced recognizable notes warmed something long cold inside Emily's heart. From the doorway, Jackson watched, transfixed. The sight of Emily with the children, sunlight streaming through stained glass to bathe them in kaleidoscope colors, created an image so beautiful it almost hurt to witness. I didn't know we had an audience, Emily said when she finally noticed him. Don't stop on my account, Jackson replied, his voice unusually soft. Mom used to be a music teacher, Olivia announced proudly. Before we made her too busy. Emily's cheeks flushed. I taught piano and voice at an elementary school, but raising twins alone, it became too much to juggle. Play something else, Mom, Sophia pleaded. Only if everyone sings along, Emily countered, fingers poised over the keys. She began a simple, cheerful tune that Noah immediately recognized from school. Soon all three children were singing along, their voices blending in sweet harmony. After a moment's hesitation, Jackson joined in, his deep baritone adding richness to their impromptu choir. For 20 minutes they filled the abandoned church. With music, hymns, children's songs, even a few pop tunes Emily managed to remember. With each note, the invisible weight that had pressed upon all of them seemed to lighten. When they finally stopped, Noah looked up at Jackson with bright eyes. Dad, I want to learn piano too. Can Miss Emily teach me? Before Jackson could respond, a movement at the doorway caught their attention. Victoria stood there, several shopping bags in her arms, her expression unreadable as she observed the scene before her. The music faded, but something had changed in the atmosphere. Emily's fingers remained on the keys, no longer afraid. Jackson stood straighter, a new resolve in his stance. And between them, three children continued humming the last melody, oblivious to the tension. Some things, Emily realized, were stronger than fear or doubt. Music had always been her refuge. Perhaps now it could also be her bridge to a new beginning. Night fell softly over the old church, transforming the stained glass windows into dark silhouettes against the walls. After a simple dinner of canned soup and crackers from Jackson's supply run, the adults worked to create more comfortable sleeping arrangements. They pushed several pews together, layering them with blankets and cushions scavenged from the storage closet. It's like camping, Noah exclaimed, bouncing on his makeshift bed. The twins, following his lead, giggled as they tested their own pew beds. Victoria had left as quickly as she'd arrived, depositing the shopping bags, filled with children's clothes, toiletries, and more food, without explanation before departing with only a stiff nod to Jackson. Her unexpected gesture of support, however reluctant, hung in the air like an unfinished conversation. As Emily tucked the twins into their blankets, Sophia's small hand caught her wrist. Mommy, I can't sleep. This place makes funny noises. Me, neither, Olivia chimed in, her eyes wide in the dimness. It's too dark. Noah sat up in his own bed. Dad always tells me stories when I can't sleep. Miss Emily, do you know any good stories? Emily smiled, settling onto the edge of the makeshift bed between her daughters. I might know a few. Jackson, who had been arranging his own sleeping space, paused to listen. In the soft glow of the battery-powered lantern, Emily's face looked younger, unguarded. Once upon a time, she began, her voice taking on a melodic quality. There were 3 little birds who got caught in a terrible storm. The wind blew so hard it scattered them from their home, and the rain soaked their feathers until they could barely fly. The children leaned in closer, captivated. Even Jackson found himself drawing nearer, sitting on the floor beside Noah's bed. The smallest bird, who was very brave, spotted an old abandoned nest high in a tree. We can shelter there until the storm passes, he said. But when they arrived, they discovered the nest wasn't empty after all. A larger bird was already there, all alone. Noah's eyes widened. Was the big bird mean? Did he chase them away? Emily shook her head. The big bird was lonely. He had lost his flock long ago and had been living by himself ever since. At first he was startled by the 3 newcomers, but when he saw how cold and wet they were, he moved over to make room, like what Mr. Jackson did for us. Sophia whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Emily's eyes met Jackson's across the dim space, a silent understanding passing between them. Yes, exactly like that. She continued the story, weaving a tale of how the birds weathered the storm together, how they sang songs to drown out the thunder, and how the big bird remembered what it felt like to be part of a family again. By the time she finished, all 3 children were struggling to keep their eyes open. And so the birds decided to rebuild the nest together, making it big enough for all of them, Emily concluded softly. Because sometimes the families we find are just as important as the families we're born into. The twins were already asleep, their matching faces peaceful in repose. Noah fought valiantly against his drooping eyelids. Miss Emily? He murmured drowsily. Yes, Noah? I think you tell stories almost as good as my mom did. With that final pronouncement, he surrendered to sleep. In the sudden quiet, Emily carefully extracted herself from between her daughters. When she looked up, Jackson was still watching her, something unreadable in his expression. You're good with him, he said quietly as they moved away from the sleeping children. He's a special boy, Emily replied. You've done an amazing job, raising him alone. Jackson's smile was tinged with sadness. Some days I feel like I'm failing her, failing Rebecca, with every mistake I make. He pulled out his wallet and removed a worn photograph, handling it with reverence. In the glow of the lantern, Emily could see a beautiful woman with Noah's eyes, her arm around a younger, happier Jackson. She was my high school sweetheart, Jackson said, his voice low. We grew up together, got married at 19. Everyone said we were too young, but when you know, you know. He traced the edge of the photo with his thumb. After the accident, Victoria moved in to help with Noah. She never left, not really. I think she's afraid of losing her last connection to Rebecca. Emily hesitated, then shared her own story. The twins' father left before they were born. He wasn't ready to be a dad, especially to two babies at once. Mark, my fiancé, he seemed different. For 2 years, he played the part of someone who accepted us, all of us. Until yesterday, when he finally admitted he never wanted another man's children. His loss, Jackson said firmly. Still hurts, Emily admitted. Not because I miss him, but because I feel like such a fool for believing him. For thinking anyone would want the complicated package that comes with me. Jackson carefully returned the photo to his wallet. I understand complicated packages. Mine comes with a 7-year-old boy and a grieving mother-in-law who thinks I'm betraying her daughter's memory by moving forward. Are you? Emily asked gently. Moving forward? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. From the children's corner came the soft sounds of peaceful breathing. I didn't think I could, Jackson finally answered. Until yesterday at the train station when I saw you sitting there in the rain. Something. Woke up. Their eyes met in the dim light, a moment of perfect understanding between two broken people who had somehow found each other in the storm. The morning brought a surprise visitor to the old church. The sound of tires on gravel alerted Jackson, who was outside gathering kindling for the small stove in the church's kitchenette. A weathered blue sedan pulled up beside his truck, and from it emerged an elderly man with a white beard and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Uncle Thomas, Jackson called, straightening up with an armful of sticks. I didn't know you were coming by. Pastor Thomas Miller embraced his nephew warmly. Word travels fast in small towns, my boy, especially when it involves Victoria Hayes, making a scene at the grocery store. His eyes twinkled with good humor. She was telling anyone who would listen about your house guests. Jackson's face fell. She's making things difficult as usual. Don't worry. Thomas patted his arm. I've known Victoria since before you were born. Her bark is worse than her bite. He gestured toward the church. Now, aren't you going to introduce me to these folks you've taken under your wing? Inside, Emily was at the piano again, teaching the twins a simple duet, while Noah watched intently. They looked up as the men entered, the music trailing off. Children, Jackson said. This is my uncle, Pastor Thomas. Uncle, this is Emily Thompson and her daughters Olivia and Sophia. Thomas approached with outstretched hands. My goodness, identical twins. What a blessing. He knelt to their eye level. And which lovely young lady is which? Sophia. Usually, the shyer of the two pointed to herself. I'm Sophia. I have a freckle by my eye. Olivia doesn't. I see it now, Thomas said seriously, though the freckle was barely visible. A perfect little mark to show that God makes each of us special, even twins. Emily watched, touched by the genuine warmth in the pastor's manner. So different from Victoria's cold judgment. Jackson tells me you play beautifully, Thomas said to Emily, gesturing to the piano. This old church hasn't heard proper music in too long. She's teaching us, Noah announced proudly, and she tells the best stories, even better than Dad's. Is that so? Thomas chuckled. I'd best up my game then. I've been telling your father stories since he was smaller than you. They shared a simple lunch together, Thomas producing fresh bread and cheese from a basket in his car. Throughout the meal, his observant eyes missed nothing. Not the way Noah hovered protectively near the twins, nor how Jackson's gaze continually found Emily, nor how Emily seemed to anticipate Jackson's needs before he expressed them. I've been thinking, Thomas said as they finished eating. That old cellar of mine on the north property, it could be fixed up proper. It's got good bones, just needs some work. Jackson looked up sharply. The one by the creek? Thomas nodded. Rebecca always said it would make a fine little home. Said it just needed someone with vision to see its potential. Emily, collecting plates, paused. I studied interior design before the twins came along. My father was a carpenter. I picked up a few things, is that so? Thomas's eyes gleamed. Perhaps the Lord does work in mysterious ways. The afternoon passed with Thomas entertaining the children with stories while Jackson and Emily walked to see the old cellar, a sturdy structure that had once been used to store equipment but could indeed be transformed into a cozy dwelling. They headed back. The church came into view just as Victoria's luxury car pulled up alongside it. Thomas sighed, spotting his old friend from a distance. That woman, he mused, has spent 3 years drowning in grief instead of celebrating her daughter's life. Rebecca wouldn't recognize what Victoria's become. She blames me, Jackson said quietly. For not protecting Rebecca. No, Thomas corrected gently. She blames herself. It's always easier to direct pain outward than to face it. He glanced at Emily. Sometimes, though, the right person comes along at the right moment to help us heal. As they approached, Victoria emerged from her car, her face thunderous as she spotted Emily walking beside Jackson. Thomas Miller, she called out, her voice carrying across the yard. I might have known you'd encourage this. This disrespect to my daughter's memory. Thomas merely smiled, unruffled by her anger. Victoria Hayes, he replied calmly. I've never known anyone who understood love and compassion better than your Rebecca. Don't you think she'd want Jackson and Noah to find happiness again? Victoria faltered, unexpected tears springing to her eyes. The morning after Pastor Thomas's visit, Emily found herself alone in the church's small back room that served as temporary storage for their few belongings. With trembling hands, she unzipped her battered suitcase, the one she'd hastily packed when Mark told her to leave. Inside, carefully folded beneath layers of the twins' clothes, lay her wedding dress. The ivory satin gleamed dully in the morning light. Emily lifted it gently, the beaded bodice catching what little sunlight streamed through the small window. She'd spent months saving for this dress, working extra shifts while the twins were in daycare. A foolish investment in a future that had dissolved like sugar in rain. It's beautiful. Emily startled, turning to find Jackson in the doorway. Heat rushed to her cheeks as she quickly tried to fold the dress away. No, don't, he said softly. It really is beautiful. It was supposed to be, Emily whispered, her fingers tracing the delicate beadwork. Mark always complained about my simple clothes, so I thought if I looked like a princess just once. She laughed bitterly. Turns out no dress can hide the fact that I come with baggage, 2 perfect little pieces of baggage that he never truly accepted. Jackson stepped closer, his eyes never leaving her face. Some people can't recognize true treasure when they see it. A tear slipped down Emily's cheek. Outside, the patter of rain began again, a gentle, cleansing summer shower. I don't want this anymore, Emily said suddenly, decisively. I don't want to keep carrying it. Before Jackson could respond, she marched past him, dress clutched in, her arms, and pushed open the church's side door. The children who had been playing a board game found in the storage closet looked up in surprise as Emily walked into the gentle rain. With ceremonial slowness, she hung the wedding dress on a low branch of the oak tree that stood beside the church. The rain immediately began to darken the fabric, washing away invisible stains of disappointment and betrayal. Noah approached first, the twins following closely behind. "What are you doing, Miss Emily?" "Letting go," she replied simply. The children exchanged glances, then Noah nodded with the gravity of someone far older. He tugged at the dress's hem, tearing away a small piece of the veil. "We should bury this," he announced. "Dad says when something ends, we should have a proper goodbye." Together, the four of them dug a small hole beneath the tree, solemnly placing the scrap of tool inside while the rain fell softly around them. From the church doorway, Jackson watched, his heart swelling with an emotion he had nearly forgotten how to feel. Hope. The day after Emily's symbolic release of her wedding dress, the skies cleared, bringing welcome sunshine to dry the muddy ground around the old church. While Jackson drove into town for more supplies and Emily organized their growing collection of donated items, Noah appointed himself official tour guide for the twins. "Come on," he urged, taking each girl by the hand. "I know all the best places around here. Dad and I explored everything when we used to come visit Uncle Thomas." The three children ventured into the grassy area surrounding the church, staying within sight of the building as Jackson had instructed. Noah walked with the confident stride of someone intimately familiar with the territory, proudly pointing out landmarks only children would consider significant. A tree perfect for climbing, rocks shaped like animals, a patch of wild strawberries barely beginning to form. "This is my favorite spot," Noah declared, leading them to a small clearing beneath an ancient oak tree. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating dappled patterns on the ground. "Sometimes I come here to talk to my mom." Sophia looked around, curiously. "Is your mom here?" Noah shook his head. "Not really, Dad says she's in heaven. But sometimes I feel like she can hear me better when I'm outside." The twins exchanged glances, communicating in that silent way only identical siblings can. "Our real dad never wanted to see us," Olivia confided, her small voice serious. "Mom thinks we don't know, but we heard her crying on the phone once. And Mark," Sophia continued, "he was nice sometimes, but he never looked at us like your dad looks at you." Noah sat cross-legged on the ground, the girls mimicking his position to form a small circle. This felt important, this sharing of secrets under the oak tree's protective branches. "Your mom is really nice," Noah said. "She makes Dad smile again. Before you came, he only had his serious face most of the time." "Do you think," Sophia asked hesitantly, "they might like each other, like in the movies?" Noah considered this with the gravity of his 7 years. "I think so. Dad looks at your mom the way he looks at old pictures of my mom, and—" He lowered his voice as if sharing a momentous secret. "I wouldn't mind if she became my mom too. I think you guys would be good sisters." Olivia's eyes widened. "We've never had a dad before, not a real one that stays." "My dad stays," Noah said with absolute certainty. "Even when things are hard. That's what he always tells me. Millers don't run when things get tough." The conversation shifted as children's discussions often do, moving from profound to playful in an instant. Soon they were gathering interesting rocks and arranging them in complex patterns on the ground, lost in imaginative play. From the church steps, Emily watched the three children, their heads bent together in conspiracy. Something in her chest tightened at the sight of them, already forming bonds that seemed to transcend their brief acquaintance. She didn't notice Jackson's return until he stood beside her, following her gaze to the children. "They're thick as thieves already," he remarked softly. "Children adapt so quickly," Emily replied. "Sometimes I think they understand things better than we do." As if sensing they were being discussed, the three looked up and waved enthusiastically before returning to their mysterious game. But something had changed in their interaction. A new closeness, a sense of belonging together that hadn't been there before. Neither adult noticed Victoria's car parked discreetly down the road, or her solitary figure watching from a distance, her expression unreadable as she observed the emerging connections between these two fractured families. Word spread quickly through the small town about the impromptu family taking shelter in the old church. It began with Mrs. Peterson at the grocery store, who overheard Victoria Hayes complaining to the cashier about that woman Jackson Miller had taken in. By noon, the story had reached the diner where Pastor Thomas regularly had coffee with the town's retired teachers. By evening, it had transformed into something between gossip and a call to action. The first visitor arrived early the next morning, Eleanor Wright, the town's librarian, carrying a box of children's books and a small suitcase of clothes her granddaughters had outgrown. "These should fit your little ones," she told Emily kindly. "My Jenny's girls are just a bit bigger now." Before Emily could properly thank her, a pickup truck rumbled into the churchyard. Frank Davidson from the hardware store climbed out, accompanied by his teenage sons, all three carrying tool belts and lumber. "Heard you're fixing up Thomas's old cellar," Frank called to Jackson. "Brought some supplies to get you started." Jackson stood speechless as the Davidson boys unloaded enough building materials to frame several rooms. "I can't accept all this," he finally managed. Frank waved away his protest. "Your uncle married my sister 40 years ago. Millers and Davidsons take care of each other." Throughout the day, more townspeople arrived. Mrs. Gonzalez from the bakery brought fresh bread and pastries. The Chen family delivered a small table and chairs perfectly sized for children. Sheriff Parker dropped off bags of groceries from the department, though everyone knew they came from his own pocket. Emily watched in amazement as the churchyard transformed into an impromptu gathering. The twins and Noah played with other children who had come along, their laughter ringing across the property. "I don't understand," Emily murmured to Jackson. "They don't even know me." "They know me," Jackson replied. "And in a town this size, that's enough." Not everyone was supportive. Victoria made her presence known, arriving in her Mercedes and pulling aside several women from her garden club. Emily could see her gesturing dramatically, clearly trying to dissuade the helpers. "She's telling them I'm after your money," Emily said with a sad smile. Classic gold digger strategy, apparently. Jackson's face darkened. "Victoria needs to..." He was interrupted by an elderly woman who broke away from Victoria's group and approached Emily directly. "You don't remember me, do you, dear?" she asked, her voice quavering with age. Emily studied the woman's face. I'm sorry. I don't think we've met." "You were the night nurse when my Harold was in hospice," the woman said, taking Emily's hands in her wrinkled ones. "3 years ago, you sang to him when you thought I was asleep. Amazing Grace, his favorite." Recognition dawned on Emily's face. "Mrs. Winters, of course I remember. How are you?" The elderly woman turned toward Victoria and the others. "This girl has the kindest heart in 3 counties, she announced firmly. "And anyone who says different is talking nonsense." Victoria's face flushed crimson. Without another word, she retreated to her car and drove away, tires spraying gravel in her wake. As the afternoon progressed, plans for the cellar renovation took shape. The community's generosity overwhelmed both Jackson and Emily, who found themselves surrounded by more support than either had experienced in years. When the twins fell asleep on a blanket in the shade, exhausted from playing, Jackson found Emily sitting alone, watching the volunteers work with tears in her eyes. "This is what community looks like," he said softly, sitting beside her. "I'd almost forgotten." Emily nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. For years, she had carried her burdens alone, convinced that independence meant isolation. Now surrounded by the kindness of strangers becoming friends, she understood what she had been missing. And somewhere down the road, Victoria Hayes sat in her parked car, watching the scene through binoculars, her expression slowly shifting from anger to something more complex, something that, if examined closely, might almost resemble longing. The cellar renovation progressed rapidly with the community's help. A week after the impromptu gathering, the bare structure already had new windows installed and interior walls framed. Jackson worked alongside the volunteers, his carpentry skills proving valuable, while Emily coordinated donations and designed the layout of what was quickly becoming a real home. The twins and Noah had established their own routine, helping where they could with simple tasks and exploring the surrounding area under supervision. Their laughter and constant chatter brought life to the construction site, reminding everyone why they were working so hard. On a particularly warm afternoon, Jackson was measuring boards for shelving when a familiar Mercedes rolled up the gravel driveway. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow as Victoria stepped out, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore casual clothes instead of her usual tailored outfits. "Victoria," Jackson acknowledged cautiously. "Noah's down by the creek with the girls and Pastor Thomas." "I didn't come to see Noah," she replied, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. She surveyed the construction project, her expression unreadable. "You're really going through with this, aren't you?" Before Jackson could answer, Emily emerged from inside the cellar, carrying paint samples. She stopped short at the sight of Victoria, wariness instantly replacing her smile. "Mrs. Hayes?" she greeted politely. Victoria looked between them, her composure suddenly cracking. To Jackson's shock, tears welled in her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't. Keep fighting." Emily moved forward instinctively, guiding the older woman to a makeshift bench of cinder blocks and planks. Jackson stood frozen, having never seen his formidable mother-in-law so vulnerable. 3 years, Victoria said, staring at her trembling hands. 3 years I've tried to keep Rebecca alive by keeping everything else exactly the same. Her clothes still hang in her childhood bedroom. I still make Noah's sandwiches the way she did." She looked up at Jackson with red-rimmed eyes. "I thought, if you moved on, if Noah called someone else Mom, it would be like losing her all over again." Emily sat beside Victoria, hesitating before placing a gentle hand on the woman's arm. "I lost my mother when I was 12, she said softly. "Cancer. For years my father kept her garden exactly as she left it, wouldn't let me change a thing in my room that she had decorated." Victoria looked at her with surprise. "He thought he was preserving her memory," Emily continued. "But all he did was freeze us in our grief. We couldn't move forward until we accepted that loving someone new doesn't erase loving someone you've lost." Victoria's shoulders slumped. "I've been horrible to you. To both of you. You love your daughter," Emily said simply, "and you're afraid of losing the last pieces of her you have left." From down the path came the sound of children's voices. The twins appeared first, holding hands as they always did when navigating unfamiliar terrain. Noah followed, deep in conversation with Pastor Thomas. When Noah spotted his grandmother, he hesitated briefly before approaching. "Grandma, are you crying?" Concern filled his young voice. Victoria quickly wiped her eyes, but made no attempt to hide her emotion as she might have before. "A little, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups need to cry too." The twins hovered nearby, uncertain. Surprisingly, it was Sophia who stepped forward first, her small hand tentatively touching Victoria's knee. "When I'm sad, my mommy hugs me," she offered, solemnly. Victoria looked at the little girl, truly looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "What's your name?" "Sweetheart? Are you Olivia or Sophia?" "I'm Sophia," she replied. "I have the freckle." She pointed to the tiny mark beside her eye. "Olivia doesn't have one." Victoria smiled through her tears. "Well, Sophia with the freckle, I think a hug might help very much." As the child climbed onto the bench beside her, Olivia followed, unwilling to be left out. To everyone's surprise, Victoria opened her arms to both girls, drawing them close in an embrace that seemed to heal something broken within. Her Jackson watched in amazement as his son joined the group, Victoria's arm extending to include him as well. Catching Emily's eye over the huddle of bodies, he saw his own wonder reflected there. The miracle of witnessing walls crumble and bridges form where before there had seemed only insurmountable divides. The cellar renovation progressed steadily over the next 2 weeks. What had once been a simple storage space was transforming into a cozy dwelling with separate bedrooms for the children, a spacious living area, and a small but functional kitchen. Victoria's unexpected change of heart brought more than emotional reconciliation. She began contributing family furniture from her attic and offering design suggestions that Emily welcomed. One afternoon, dark clouds rolled in without warning, bringing with them the promise of a summer storm. Jackson and Emily were alone at the cellar, securing tarps over exposed areas and hastily gathering tools before the downpour began. "That should hold it," Jackson said, anchoring the last corner of a heavy tarp over newly installed roof beams. "Where did this weather come from? The forecast said clear skies all week." Emily laughed, struggling to hold down her side against the strengthening wind. "Welcome to country living. My grandmother used to say, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes." Thunder rumbled ominously overhead, and the first heavy raindrops began to fall, slowly at first, then in a sudden deluge that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. "The wood," Jackson shouted over the roar of the rain, pointing to a stack of expensive lumber donated by the hardware store. Without hesitation, they both rushed to cover it, the rain instantly soaking through their clothes. Working side by side, they managed to drag a tarp over the precious materials just as lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating Emily's face in stark relief. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks, rainwater streaming down her face, but she was laughing, a sound of pure, unexpected joy that caught Jackson off guard. "What's so funny?" he called over the storm's howl. "This," Emily gestured around them. "3 weeks ago I was in a train station with no future, and now I'm in a thunderstorm protecting lumber for a house I never dreamed of." Jackson felt something shift inside him as he watched her, this woman who had lost so much yet could still find joy in a rainstorm. Without planning to, he reached for her hand. "Emily," he said, his voice barely audible above the thunder. "I need to tell you something." She stilled, raindrops clinging to her eyelashes as she looked at him. "I think I'm falling in love with you," Jackson confessed, the words rushing out before courage could desert him. "And it terrifies me because I never thought I'd feel this way again after Rebecca. I never thought I'd want to." Emily's eyes widened, her hand tightening around his. "Jackson, You don't have to say anything," he interrupted. "I know it's fast and complicated and there are the children to consider." "Jackson," Emily said more firmly, stepping closer. "I'm scared too. Mark wasn't the first person to decide my children and I were too much to handle. I'm afraid to trust this feeling." Their faces were inches apart now, rain streaming between them. "But," Jackson asked, hope rising in his chest. "But I think I'm falling in love with you too," Emily whispered. "All of this, it feels like coming home after being lost for a very long time." From the church windows across the property, 3 small faces pressed against the glass, watching with delight as Jackson pulled Emily into an embrace, the rain continuing to fall around them like a blessing. And from her car parked nearby, Victoria Hayes observed the scene, a gentle smile replacing the bitter frown that had been her companion for so long. With trembling fingers, she touched the wedding ring she still wore, then slowly, deliberately twisted it off and placed it in a small velvet box she'd brought for this exact purpose. "It's time," she whispered to herself. "It's finally time to let them all move forward." The weeks following Jackson and Emily's rain-soaked confession brought remarkable changes. The cellar transformation accelerated, with community members appearing daily to lend a hand. What had once been a simple storage space was now unmistakably becoming a proper home, with walls framed, windows installed, and the beginnings of character. In every room, Emily's interior design background proved invaluable. She worked alongside the volunteers, directing the placement of insulation and planning the layout of each space for maximum comfort and functionality. Jackson marveled at how naturally she took charge, her quiet confidence drawing respect from even the most experienced builders. "I never thought I'd use these skills again," Emily admitted one evening as they reviewed her sketches for built-in bookshelves. "After the twins were born, I just focused on survival." "You're incredible," Jackson said simply, the admiration in his voice making her blush. The children had become an inseparable trio, appointing themselves official supervisors of the construction. Noah created elaborate drawings of what each room should contain, while the twins solemnly collected paint chips and fabric samples from the hardware store, arranging them in careful combinations. "We need a big window here," Noah explained seriously to Frank Davidson, pointing to the wall of what would be the twins' bedroom, "so they can see the stars at night." "A fine architectural consideration," Frank agreed, ruffling the boy's hair. "We'll make it happen." Even Victoria contributed to the effort, arriving one afternoon with her car trunk filled with furniture from her attic. "These were in Rebecca's childhood room," she explained, helping unload a set of twin beds with intricate headboards. She always said she wanted her children to have them someday. When she unveiled a beautifully preserved wooden cradle, Jackson caught his breath. "Rebecca slept in this as a baby," Victoria said softly. "My mother before her. 4 generations of our family." She ran her hand lovingly over the smooth wood. "I've been saving it, hoping there might be another generation someday." The significance of the gesture wasn't lost on anyone. Victoria wasn't just offering furniture, she was giving her blessing. On a clear Saturday afternoon, as the final coat of paint dried on the living room walls, Pastor Thomas suggested they create something to mark the occasion. "Every home needs a personal touch," he said, producing several small cans of colorful paint. "Something that makes it uniquely yours." Emily had the perfect idea. She mixed the paints in shallow trays, then called everyone together. "I think we should all leave our mark," she suggested, dipping her palm in yellow paint and pressing it against a section of the entryway wall. Her handprint remained bright and cheerful against the neutral background. The children needed no further encouragement, eagerly coating their hands in various colors and adding their smaller prints alongside Emily's. Jackson followed with his larger handprint in deep blue, then Pastor Thomas with forest green. To everyone's surprise, Victoria stepped forward next, selecting a delicate lavender for her contribution. As she pressed her hand to the wall, completing the impromptu family mural, tears shimmered in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of something long absent from her life. Hope. "It's perfect," Noah declared, studying their collective artwork with satisfaction. "Now it's really our house. Our house." The words seemed to hang in the air, simple yet profound. Somewhere in the midst of hammers and nails, paint swatches and floor plans, they had built more than walls and rooms. They had constructed the foundation of a family. The afternoon before the family was set to move into their newly completed home, Jackson found himself alone at the cellar. Emily had taken the children into town for ice cream to celebrate, giving him a rare moment of solitude among the freshly painted walls and assembled furniture. As he checked the bathroom sink installation, one final time, a floorboard in the main bedroom creaked unusually beneath his weight. Curious, Jackson knelt to examine it, discovering the board was loose. When he lifted it, his heart nearly stopped. There, in a small hollow beneath the floor, was a wooden box he recognized immediately. It was Rebecca's keepsake box, the one that had gone missing after the funeral. Jackson had assumed it was lost in the chaos of grief. With trembling hands, he lifted the box, his fingers tracing the carved initials on its lid. RHM, Rebecca Hayes Miller. The dust coating its surface suggested it had been hidden away for years. "I wondered when you'd find that." Jackson turned to see Victoria standing in the doorway, her expression solemn yet peaceful. "Did you put this here?" he asked, bewildered. Victoria nodded, stepping into the room. "After the funeral, I couldn't bear to give them to you. I wasn't ready to let her go." She sat beside him on the edge of the bed. "They're letters she wrote to you during your marriage, little notes she kept in a journal but never gave you. And one," her voice faltered, "one she wrote when she first got sick." Sick. Rebecca wasn't sick. "It was an accident," Jackson said, confusion evident in his voice. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "She didn't want you to know. The headaches had just started. She was going to tell you after her doctor's appointment, the one scheduled for the day after the accident." Jackson stared at the box, his world tilting. "Why keep this from me all these years?" "At first it was my grief," Victoria admitted. "Then it became my shield. Something I could hold over you, a connection to her you couldn't have." She reached for his hand. But seeing you these past weeks with Emily and those little girls, I realized how selfish I've been. Rebecca would be so disappointed in what I've become. With shaking fingers, Jackson opened the box. Inside were dozens of folded notes in Rebecca's flowing handwriting, love notes, reminders, dreams for their future. But beneath them all was an envelope with different writing on it. For whoever comes after me. She always was wiser than both of us, Victoria whispered, rising to leave. I'll be at the church if you need me. Alone again, Jackson carefully opened the final letter. As he read Rebecca's words, her blessing for him to find happiness again, her hopes for Noah, her final expression of love that transcended even death, tears flowed freely down his face. The sound of a car pulling up outside broke his reverie. Through the window, he could see Emily helping the twins from the back seat, Noah bouncing excitedly beside them, all holding ice cream cones. Their laughter drifted through the open windows like music. Jackson carefully returned the other letters to the box, but kept the final one in his hand as he went to meet his family, the one he'd lost and the one he'd unexpectedly found. As Emily approached, her smile faded to concern when she saw the evidence of tears on his face. Jackson, what's wrong? Instead of answering, he handed her Rebecca's letter. She knew, he said softly. Somehow she knew there would be someone like you someday. Emily read silently, her own eyes filling with tears. When she finished, she looked up at Jackson with an expression of profound understanding. Without words, she stepped into his embrace, the letter pressed between them like a bridge connecting past to future. From the doorway of their new home, 3 children watched, ice cream forgotten, as the final piece of healing fell into place. Pastor Thomas stood beneath the oak tree outside the newly completed cellar home, his well-worn Bible open in his hands. What had begun as a simple house blessing had transformed into something far more significant. Word had spread through the small town, and now dozens of community members gathered in chairs hastily borrowed from the church. Emily smoothed the simple white sundress Victoria had insisted on buying for her, nervousness fluttering in her stomach. From inside the house, she could hear the excited whispers of the twins as Victoria helped them adjust the flower crowns in their hair. "Are you ready?" Victoria asked, appearing in the doorway. The past weeks had softened her face, erasing years of grief-etched lines. "I never expected any of this," Emily admitted. "6 weeks ago I was abandoned at a train station, and now—" Victoria took her hands. "Life has a way of giving us what we need, even when it doesn't give us what we want." She pressed something into Emily's palm, a delicate gold band. "This was my mother's. I'd like you to have it." Outside, Jackson waited with Noah beside him, both in matching blue shirts. Pastor Thomas had just begun speaking about new beginnings when Noah tugged urgently at Jackson's sleeve. "Dad," he whispered, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Does this mean Emily and the twins are staying forever?" A hush fell over the gathering. Jackson knelt to his son's eye level, aware of all eyes upon them. "Would you like that, buddy?" Noah nodded emphatically. More than anything. Jackson looked up as Emily emerged from the house, the twins skipping, ahead of her, scattering wildflower petals. In that moment, surrounded by the community that had embraced them all, he made the easiest decision of his life. "Emily," he called, his voice carrying across the yard. "I think we need to make this official. Will you marry me? Will you make this family complete?" Thunder rumbled in the distance as Emily's tears spilled over. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." As if on cue, a gentle summer rain began to fall, but no one moved to seek shelter. Instead, they gathered closer, witnesses to the miracle of 2 broken families becoming whole beneath a sky that had once brought only sorrow, but now delivered blessings like sweet rain upon parched earth. The morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the handcrafted curtains of the cellar home. 6 months had passed since the improvised wedding ceremony beneath the oak tree. 6 months of adjustments, laughter, tears, and the countless small moments that weave together to form a family. Jackson stood at the kitchen counter, preparing, Breakfast while watching through the window as Noah taught the twins to fly the kite that had been his birthday present. At nearly 8 years old now, he had embraced his role as big brother with pride and responsibility, his protective nature extending to sisters who had quickly become the center of his world. "They're getting better at it," Emily observed, rapping, her arms around Jackson's waist from behind, her chin resting on his shoulder. Last week, Sophia was in tears when the kite kept nosediving. Jackson turned, smiling as he took in the sight of his wife, still a marvel to think of her that way, her face glowing with contentment. They're persistent, just like their mother. The transformation of their lives still amazed him daily. The cellar renovation had become a symbol of their journey. What began as a damaged, abandoned structure had been rebuilt with love and community into something beautiful and lasting. Every corner of their home held meaning, from the twins' bedroom with its stargazing window to the handprint mural in the entryway that now included prints from everyone who had helped in the construction. A framed photograph of Rebecca occupied, a place of honor on the mantel, surrounded by new family photos. Noah with the twins on their first day of school together, Jackson and Emily on their wedding day, Victoria beaming as she helped the children plant a garden. There was no attempt to erase the past. Instead, they had learned to honor it while embracing their present joy. Victoria had surprised everyone by becoming a devoted grandmother to all 3 children. Her weekly Sunday dinners had become a cherished tradition, her once imposing home now filled with the sounds of children's laughter. The grief that had hardened her heart had not disappeared, but had softened into something that allowed love to flow again. Emily placed breakfast plates on the table as Jackson called the children in from the yard. They tumbled through the door. In a flurry of excitement, cheeks flushed from the morning air. "Dad, Olivia kept the kite up for 5 whole minutes," Noah announced proudly. "Not just 5 minutes," Olivia corrected, her confidence having blossomed over the months. 5 minutes and 27 seconds, I counted." Sophia, ever the quieter twin, slipped into her chair and reached for her juice. "I think I'll try again after breakfast. Noah says I just need to feel the wind better." As they settled around the table, this mismatched, unexpected family that had found each other in the midst of their separate storms, Emily cleared her throat, a mysterious smile playing at her lips. "I have some news," she said, her eyes meeting Jackson's across the table. Jackson set down his fork, recognizing the significance in her tone. "What is it?" Emily's hand drifted to her stomach in an unconscious gesture that spoke volumes. "We're going to need another handprint on our wall in about 7 months." For a moment, silence blanketed the room as her words registered. Then Noah let out a whoop of excitement. The twins began asking rapid-fire questions about babies, and Jackson moved around the table to pull Emily into a gentle embrace, tears of joy making his vision blur. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "We're having a baby?" Emily nodded, her own eyes shining. "Doctor confirmed it yesterday. Victoria already knows. I hope that's okay. She was with me when I got dizzy at her house." Jackson laughed. "Of course it's okay. She's probably already knitting booties." "She's bringing the cradle this afternoon," Emily confirmed with a smile. Noah approached, the twins close behind him. "What will we name the baby?" he asked, his expression serious with the weight of such an important decision. Jackson and Emily exchanged a glance, a world of understanding passing between them. "If it's a girl," Emily began, "or a boy," Jackson added, "we thought perhaps Rain," they finished together. "Rain Miller." Noah tested the name thoughtfully. "Because the rain brought us all together." Sophia clapped her hands. "I like it. Rain is pretty." "And important," Olivia added with the wisdom children sometimes unexpectedly display. "Mom says without rain nothing grows." As if summoned by their conversation, a gentle patter began against the windows. A soft summer shower starting without warning in the clear sky, sunlight still streaming through the droplets to create miniature rainbows on the kitchen floor. Jackson opened the front door, and together the family stepped onto the porch, watching the gentle rainfall nourish the flower garden they had planted together. Emily leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, while the children extended their hands to feel the warm drops. "It's a blessing," she murmured. "Just like that first day at the train station, Jackson nodded, understanding completely. The rain that had once symbolized only loss and grief for both of them had transformed into something else entirely. A promise of renewal, of unexpected joy, of life continuing in ways neither could have imagined during their darkest days. Camera B. The mantelpiece inside, visible through the open door, Rebecca's photograph seemed to catch the light differently. Not a ghost haunting their present, but a guardian angel smiling upon the family that had grown from the seeds of grief she had left behind. And as they stood together, sheltered yet embracing the gentle shower, Jackson knew with absolute certainty that sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive disguised as its greatest sorrows, and that love, like rain, has the power to transform barren ground into gardens of extraordinary beauty.